they're in an environment with a lot of people, and that recorder ends up saving, their audio and saving their lives, really. So, um, all right. So, our guest today is an individual who describes himself as a introvert who doesn't work nights and weekends, doesn't do parties or events, and is completely antisocial. And when you find out today what he does for a living, you might think that I am describing the wrong person. Has successfully knocked on over 125 doors in his real estate business over 2 states, and frankly is one of my heroes right now after reading his book, Doors Open When You Knock, a Realtor's Handbook for Boundless Opportunity and Freedom. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Stephen Ross from Denver, Colorado, I believe.
You got it.
Right. So how's it going today?
It's going awesome. Thanks for having me. And this is terrible. So I'm going to start off by doing the worst thing a guest can do, which is correct the introduction you just gave me, which was amazing, except you left out something.
You eat puppies for
breakfast. No. It's 125,000 doors.
Oh, what did I say? 125?
125. Because someone's sitting there thinking like 125 doors, that's no big deal. And you're right, 125 doors would be no big deal.
Oh, I did that on purpose.
Okay, good.
Oh, that's funny. I left out the most important statistic, which I find to be completely amazing. So, with that, I mean, before we get into all the door knocking and stuff, I mean, tell us a little bit about your background, because I actually read I read the book, and I foolishly didn't order it quick enough, so I ended up having to grow in this process by ordering the ebook and reading it on the Kindle version off of Amazon. And
look at you.
I'm old school. I like the the paper, the touch and feel, and dog ear the pages and get my highlighter out and make little notes, knowing full well I'll probably never go back to it, but sometimes I do, and it's kind of fun to look at that. But no, it was kind of a growth exercise for me too, to actually get the book, because I wanted to really understand what it was, the message you were trying to convey in the book. And like I said in the introduction, I felt like you were writing the book for me. Okay. And I've been in the business 20 years and stuff, and you nailed so many things, like just so spot on, which we'll get to in a minute. But give us a little background to the people who are listening. What started your real estate journey? But you haven't always been doing real estate, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I know the answers to these questions, obviously, but what was what were you doing prior to real estate, and what led to the shift?
I think this is a great example, and I'm not going to start when I was in 5th grade.
No. Oh, come on. We want to put people to sleep,
But I will start. So I got my license. So we're recording on. Is it okay to say when we're recording?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we're recording here on March 17th, 2021.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. March 15th, 2005 is when I got my real estate license, my first real estate license in California. Now, prior to that, I was a chief technology officer for a medical startup, and spent a few years doing that. And we sold that company. Great experience, didn't make a ton of money. Actually, most of us lost money. So here I am. It's March 15th, 2005. I've got 2 little boys and a little girl on the way. And I'm going into a commission-only business. And I'm an introvert, and I don't sell anything. I was a technology executive. I wasn't even a sales guy. And the reason is 2005, for those of you who remember 2005, certainly in Southern California was amazing, right? It was just a spectacular real estate run. And if you were breathing, you were making money selling real estate. And so I looked around and I'm like, and no offense to the people, but there was a lot of people making a lot of money. And I'm like, these people are not that bright. I could do this, right? I'm a UCLA grad. I've worked on Wall Street. I've done technology startups. I could do this, which is what everybody says when they get into real estate. Oh, it's not that hard. I could do this, right? And we all know, for those of us who've been around, it is much harder than it looks.
I always joke, like, because one of the first things many people will say, why are you getting into the business? And they'll say, well, I really like houses and I really like people. And my response is, well, this business will cure you of both of those things. So
exactly.
Yeah, and obviously I'm kidding, to some degree, but well, I'm kidding, obviously, but it's so much more than that, right? I mean, so anyway, continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I just, that really is it. I just decided that it was going to be something new for me. I didn't want to go back into IT. I didn't want to go back into consulting. And it seemed like there was no limit in the right there. I mean, I didn't quite get it at the time. I mean, I sort of conceptually got it. Like, I hadn't decided to knock on doors yet, but one of the things in our technology business was we were raising money. Well, if you're trying to raise $20 million for a business, there's only so many places you can go to raise money, right? And when you're at the end of that list, you're done, right? You're out of business. And if anyone's ever flown into Los Angeles, have you ever flown into LA, Scott?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So if you remember, if you had a window seat, if you look out the window, you literally fly over Los Angeles or the greater LA area for like 20 minutes. And I was flying back into LA one day and I'm like, I just looked out and I said, there are a lot of houses. I am never going to run out of people to sell something to. And that really was the difference from going, because people told me to get into commercial and like, no, I want to do residential. And that's how I got into residential real estate.
So, okay, so you got into residential real estate. You were a technology startup, which is funny that I was in technology prior to getting into real estate. It was, and literally the choices before me were get my Volkswagen microbus out of my parents' pasture and get a video camera and drive around the country videotaping it until I ran out of money. And then keep going after that, or do anything else. But I was, I worked on the 48th floor, and there were days I'm like, gosh, I wonder how long it would take me to fall from here, because I was just so tired of sitting in a cubicle and doing something I clearly wasn't meant to be doing, right? And real estate seemed like a real viable option. And again, it was early 2000s, the market was hot. So tell us about that experience. Like when you started, I mean, did you like six figures right away and suddenly you were Ryan Serhant or whatever and the $1 million listing guy, or what happened?
That's not me. I mean, I'm smart enough, I'm talented enough, but somehow the universe had different plans for me. And they said, young man, you were going to take the longer road and learn a little. And so, I think back to when I was with Coldwell Banker. It was an NRT owned company. Coldwell Banker in Southern California in those days was the dominant player. And they had, for all their new agents, they had a 2-week training course. It was called Fast Start. And the last day of Fast Start, they bring in this coach, real estate coach, and he was a former NFL player, and he was gruff and rude and kind of a bully. And he said, pretty simply, he said, this is a simple business. It's a contact sport. You got to knock on heads, knock on doors, pick one. And I thought, well, screw this guy. I mean, I went to UCLA. I've worked on Wall. I've done all these things. I am not knocking on doors. I'm from LA. I'll call people I know. And after about 60 days, I ran out of people to call, right? And I was not making a ton of money. So that's how I thought, well, I better try this knocking on door stuff. So no, it was not rainmaking for me day one.
Right. So how long was it? I mean, before you got your first sale? I mean, was it days, weeks, months?
it's hard to remember. I think the first year I might have sold 4 or 5 houses, and literally the very first listing I took was almost by accident. Like, I'm out there knocking on doors. I was too afraid to talk about real estate. So I was doing this old Tom Hopkins thing called I was doing a survey. And so I knock on this door, and this very nice man answers the door. I ask him a few questions. He shuts the door. I go to the next house. I come down the sidewalk of the next house. I'm going down the sidewalk to the other house. And I see him. He's coming at me. He's running out his door and he's waving at me. And he waves me to come back. And he brings me back into his house. And this is what had happened in between him shutting the door and him coming to flag me down. So he shuts the door. He goes into his house, and his wife says, "Tom, who was at the door?" And he says, "A realtor." And she says, "Well, where is he?" And Tom says, "Well, he left." And Lucille says, "Tom, we're moving. Go get him." And so he was literally flagging me down to say, "Hey, we're moving to Hawaii. Can you sell our house?" Right?
Wow.
So even when you're terrible, even when you suck, if you could just get your butt out there, right, you're bound to find a few crumbs.
That is incredible. And so true, right? You don't know. How are you going to know if somebody is in the marketplace to sell if you're not letting them know you're available to help them sell? Like, you were going out to where the business was, and and not to jump ahead too much, but there's so much, again, there's so much in your book I identified with. I happen to love, right? Because it's the God, there's so many great quotes in there, but it's like, the secret every writer knows, it's not the writing that's hard, it's sitting down to write that's hard. And I believe that door knocking's hard every time you do it, right? But you talk about the I'll call it the tyranny of the urgent, right? Where and I'm glad my brother Jeremy was Jeremy's like the producer of the show. He's also my my favorite minion lackey.
Pincushion.
Yeah, pincushion. And Jeremy fell victim to the tyranny of the urgent. He had a lead call that he knew we were meeting today at 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And what did Jeremy do right before our meeting? Right before we aired this episode? Oh, wait, Jeremy, I'm going to unmute you. What did you do?
I had to call him. If I don't call him within a minute, there's going to be 3 other people that do. So I had to do it.
Anyway, so having read your book, I'm like, okay, this is an example. And online leads are a kind of their own beast. And we have here we do property here in flyover country in the bunker. We have a property management business as well as a real estate brokerage. So there's different dynamics, in the two businesses, but there's also synergies between the two, which we've been able to capitalize on over the last dozen or so years, because I too started out at Coldwell Banker, NRT. I remember the fast start. They took the payment for $2.99 or whatever, and you put you in 2 weeks of class, which I never did. I skipped that part. But yeah, I just remember, like, you spend so much time when you start, you're trying to figure out what to do, right? And you spend so much time getting ready, to get busy, to do it. And in your book, you talked about the word resistance from the War of Art, and talk a little bit about that. Obviously you read Pressfield. You had some really good examples that I was like, you nailed it. I'm like, damn, he nailed it exactly. Like, how did you feel when you went door knocking, like, every time?
I mean, thanks for bringing up that chapter. That chapter, it's a weird thing to talk about, right? I didn't coin that. I didn't write that book. but I feel like it's absolutely missing in most real estate education. It is a real force. Like, I know he talks about it sort of mystically, but it does not occur mystically in real estate. If you stop and look, resistance is like the jaws of life on your shoulder holding you back from whatever you need to go be doing in that moment. And in door knocking, which is, where I got schooled in this lesson, I never wanted to knock on doors. Who wants to knock on doors? Jeremy doesn't want to knock on doors. Scott doesn't want to knock on doors. No one wants to knock on doors. And therefore, any little excuse that will get you out of knocking on doors that seems valid, right? I'm using air quotes, is a great way to get out of what you should be doing. And that is simply just resistance rearing its head. And some of the examples I give are, early on, trying to figure out what to do, right? So I didn't have an assistant. I needed to figure out what I was going to bring to the door every day. I felt like I should bring something. So I, being a little witty and halfway smart, I would write something, print 50 or 100 copies, and then I'd get to the door, I'd get out of my car, and then I'd go look and I'd say, oh man, there's a typo on this. Now I got to go back to the office and redraft it and reprint it. And then, by the time I get back, resistance is saying, oh, it's too late to go now. You'll have to go tomorrow.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And we all have been there in some version of it.
Well, and you mentioned, you'd be ready to go door knocking. You had a really good example in there, but I'll get to that in a second. But, like you get somebody, an internet lead who saw a sign call. I got to go see the house right now. It's the only time. Well, how about in 2 hours, or how about tomorrow? No, it's got to be right now. And, how many of those people ever ended up like turning into clients, or, it's either zero or really close to zero.
Did you ever see The Big Short?
Yeah.
There's the great scene where Steve Carell and Mark Baum, they're in Vegas, and it's supposed to be Angelo Mozilla, right? The CEO of Countrywide, who's talking. And Steve Carell's got his hand up, and no one can see me if you're just listening to this, but he's got his fingers up with the zero. He's like yelling, zero. There's a 0% chance of that happening, right?
Yeah.
There's 0% chance, maybe half a point, but it's 0% of those leads ever turning into something. It's just never worked out. Never.
Yeah, it's such a low conversion, low probability when you're gonna abandon, again, door knocking, which I agree, it's not something I've ever enjoyed doing. Like, I think about it right now and I have a visceral reaction, right? I break out in hives just thinking about it. But the reality is, like, especially in this market right now, what would you rather have? A chance at, talking to 500 people, or say you can maybe talk to 50, 100 in a session, before being exhausted or, missing the sweet spot, say 50 people. Would you rather talk to 50 people where you can hang a sign in their yard where it's, with rare exceptions right now, it's going to sell? Or would you rather talk to 50 internet leads, if you can even get them on the phone, right? Where you have to shuttle them around to anywhere from 10 to 510 houses, writing 10 offers in multiple offers, because the market, I'm sure, is hot there. We know it is, right? You're in Denver. It's hot here. And, Jeremy wrote 3 offers this weekend for a client. He got 0 accepted. Every situation was multiple offers. And these are people he knew, right? He knows, right? And they're friends, acquaintances, whatever. But the conversion rate on these online buyer internet leads is so infinitesimally small. And the cost of, acquiring them, if you're paying Zillow or Realtor.com or, blah, 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 or whoever, is so high that it just isn't rational that you would go that route versus going and knocking on doors where you have about a 99% probability of selling the house if you get a client. Am I wrong? Crazy?
No, not wrong at all. Not wrong, not crazy. But there's something to be said, is everyone going to be happy you knocked on their door? Absolutely not. But you'd be surprised at how many people are, depending on how you go to the door will depend on what you get at the door. If you go with a commitment to serve and be open and respectful and deferential to people, you would be amazed at how people respond to that. If you're just going to convert someone and get a lead or get a sale and you could care less about the person, you're right. There's going to be more doors slammed in your face because people can sense that immediately. And I'm not saying that one's right or wrong. I'm only pointing out that one will lead to certainly a richer experience. And at least for me, it's turned into an unbelievable source of revenue and just goodwill. From creating relationships with people at the door, right? You just to be amazed.
Well, I think you nailed it right there. Like if you go there with and believe it in your core, in your soul, that you can actually help people, that you're there, you're not focused on, okay, what's the commission I can make on this, right? But no, I can actually help them because I do have a depth and breadth of knowledge and I can be of service. I think that's the key word. And you go there with that mindset and that mentality, I think it permeates from you. And the person who's just, looking at transactions and trying to hit numbers and, I got to hit 50 houses today and running through. I think people can sense that or smell
Sure.
that or, a mile away. Like, how let me ask, what was your tactic? What was your technique? I mean, you're an introvert, right? And,
Yep.
and you, like you said in your book, like you've always hated door knocking. You always did, still do, always probably will, just because it's scary and who likes rejection. And as an introvert, it's probably, you really got to step outside yourself. But what was your kind of your presentation? Like, did the survey help you warm up with people? Did that fall away and you just were able to do it naturally? Can you walk through that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two parts to that. I mean, before I say a moment on the tactic, I'll just say, I just wanted to comment on something because I think this is true with however we greet people, whether we're doing open house or social networking. I mean, like when we go back to in person, right? We go to parties and stuff like that, networking events. And what I realized when I started knocking on doors is that when I go knock on a door, I am interrupting your day and I am trespassing on your property at the same time. So the first thing I got was I have a commitment to leave people better off than when I found them. Now, that doesn't mean I'm a real estate messiah, because I am not, but I can certainly wish people well and say, have a great day with a smile, even if they're about to slam the door on me, which almost doesn't happen. The second thing is, look, I had 3 kids to feed, still have 3 kids to feed, didn't lose any. And, so I am looking for now business. I am looking for business now, not 3 years from now when their kids graduate from high school. And then the third commitment is, how can I be of service? Because again, the odds of any one person moving when I meet them is low, right, in that moment. So how can I be of service? It could be they need a contractor. I've helped quilters get together. I've helped people get jobs. I've helped people become friends. I mean, how hard is it really to connect 2 people that when we are in the people business, really? And so that's the first piece. So that frames exactly how I'm going to the door. And then how I actually get to the door, that's what you wanted me to go into, right, Scott?
Well, yeah, all of it. I mean, because I think it's all interesting, right? Because I guarantee anybody listening to this has got the same problem you have.
Yeah.
Right. Like they don't enjoy, they don't love going knocking door to door. Like I said, you're intruding on people's private time, you're trespassing. Odds are they're not happy to see you, right? They weren't saying, I hope a realtor comes to my door today.
That is not what they were thinking.
Even if they're thinking about selling, they're not thinking that.
They're not thinking that. You're right. So how I knocked on the door the first 12-ish years of my career is not how the last couple of years went. And we've done a bunch of work with Chris Voss, who's the author of Never Split the Difference. If you haven't read that book, well, read my book, please. But you should read You should read Chris's book.
I own multiple copies. I have signed copies. I've hung out with Chris Voss,
Yeah.
and Jeremy is his number one fan.
Yeah.
Jeremy?
Got a signed book from Chris Voss. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Chris is, taking a emotionally intelligent approach to the door. So, and it took me a while, right? Because I've been doing it one way a long time, fairly successfully. But this, I changed how I went to the door. And so now how I go to the door is, knock, knock, knock. And I'm acknowledging that I'm trespassing and interrupting their day, And oftentimes, so I go usually 11 to 1 or 12 to 2. It's not unusual for people to come to the door eating lunch, right? Their mouth is chewing, right? So if I knock on the door, Scott comes to the door, he's chewing his lunch. I say, "Hi, it's Stephen the realtor. Looks like I caught you at a bad time. In fact, it looks like I caught you right in the middle of lunch. Is now a bad time?" And they'll say, "Well, I'm in the middle of eating lunch." And if I don't know them, I'll say, "Well, what I have to say will take less than 2 minutes," because it will. And then I pause. See, like that, like I actually pause and then let them fill the
With
space.
your question, are you looking for the no? Is now?
Yeah, looking for the no.
Would it be crazy for me to take 2 minutes of your time right now to help you?
Yeah.
Possibly.
So in this case, what I have to say will take less than 2 minutes. And then I let them respond, and they'll either say, "You don't have time." And I say, "Great, have a great day." Or they say, "Yeah, shoot." Right. And I know how to do this quickly. I've done this a long time. And if they still want to talk, I'll say, I know I asked for 2 minutes. How would you like, what would you like to do? And then I get permission still to keep that conversation going. I don't just assume because they're talking to me that it's okay. So I re-acknowledge, "Hey, look, I said 2 minutes. It's been 2 minutes. How would you like to proceed?" And let them tell me. Because then when in that scenario, they're giving me permission to speak for 2 minutes in the first place. And then secondly, if they want to continue the conversation, again, they're giving me permission. They are not bound. I give them an out. It's very easy for people to be in that conversation.
And when you hear the shotgun being cocked, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Look at the time.
Yeah.
So do you leave something with them? Do you like, because that's like, some of these things are crutches, right? Like people like, well, I got to get my pamphlet ready. And if I got this leather bound, journal I can hand them that says, Thoughtful Moments by Scott Pekarik, that'll make all the difference. Like, what do you do? Like, it
doesn't matter. I mean, I do bring something, but it is irrelevant. I mean, I have gone to the doors and I have forgotten everything, including my business card. Right? Going to the door, I was looking for a buyer. Someone says, "Hey, I know someone, give me your card." I'll hand it to them. And I go to reach in my pocket and realize, I forgot to put the cards in my pocket. I'm like, "Give me your number. I'll just have to text you." No big deal, right?
Right. Yeah, because I feel like so often, and I'm guilty of this. I mean, everything I say, it sounds like criticisms of other people. I'm really talking about me. I'm projecting. And It's like, I've been guilty of getting ready to get ready, right up to the point where it's 9 o'clock at night. Like, oh, well, look at this. I got to go home now. The wife and kids need me, and I've accomplished, really nothing but respond to a bunch of urgent items that weren't really urgent, and basically have hobbled myself and my ability to earn income that day because I let myself get wrapped up into nonsense. Most of the time it's nonsense. You get caught up on, what's overthecap.com. How much salary cap space do the Denver Broncos have versus the Minnesota Vikings, and which free agents will they sign? Like important stuff like that. Versus servicing your clients and making their lives better. What is just to back up, like looking back on a successful career, and success has many definitions. So when I say that, I mean there's monetary is one that many people measure, but there's more. It's way more than that, right? A fulfilling, sometimes I think is more important, or at least equally important. I heard a line like, um, would you rather have a successful life or a life you enjoyed living, right? And which is I think is probably more the fulfillment side of it. But if you had to start over, number one, would you change anything? And if you could, what's the number one thing?
There's two parts to that. I think switching markets was really hard, right? So I actually built up a fairly good reputation in 4+ years in Southern California in the markets I was working. And when when '08 happened and I knew it was going to be tough, we decided to pick up and move to Denver. And although I don't regret that decision one bit, it's been amazing. I would have made way more money if I stayed in California. Not because the prices were higher, but I didn't have to start all over. And that I wasted 5, 6, 7 years probably doing that. Just getting my footing here, figuring out what markets, so that's the first part. It is not for the faint of heart. It is doable, but just realize it costs something. And then the second thing is, if I were to go back and change something, it just took me a long time to prove to myself that in the end, I'm never, maybe someone else will, but, and if you follow Chris Voss, he would agree with the statement, because that's where I got it solidified. You're never going to convert a no into a yes. It just is not going to happen. And if on a small percentage it does, it takes a lot of work. Therefore, in all the doors I knocked on, if I had learned the lesson sooner to just quickly let go of the people I knew were never going to work with me, I could have saved a lot of time by not knocking on doors where I knew they were never going to work with me, right? But there was a part of me that says, no, I must knock on every door. I must give everybody an equal opportunity. And so I wasted a lot of time. I think would have made a substantial difference in my revenue, maybe, but I would have gotten more time back. So
it might be part of the growth process too,
yeah.
Right? One of my lines, I don't know if anybody else has ever said it, but no one's ever said it as well as I do, is that we always are paying tuition in life. Sometimes we write checks for it. Sometimes we pay it with our time, but you have to pay the toll, right? And sometimes you don't learn, like you have to fall on your face maybe several times to know that, and I'm not saying you pursuing no's is necessarily falling on your face, but it might be a little bit of a stumble looking back and say, hey, if I would have known what I know now, I could do it. Like if someone were to get in, like say Jeremy, for instance, he's not nearly so long in the tooth as I am. Like someone like him getting in, he's tired of my anecdotes, I'm sure, and my constant berating. But what would you say to somebody new to this business? I mean, the business has changed a lot in 20 years, but kind of also hasn't.
Yeah. Hasn't. When I'm in front of a group of people, I put up, this was true up through March of 2020. The last year has been a little different, but when this pandemic ends and life goes back to normal, my life would look exactly the same, because although the business is, I show a picture when I got in the business with my 3 little kids, and then I show a picture of what they look like today, right? And they're adults practically. And when you see that contrast, you realize how much life happens for all of us, right? In a 15, 16, 17-year gap. And yet the thing that has stayed absolutely the same is what my days looked like, right? My day was exactly the same. I got up, I did what I did. I went to the doors at a certain time. I left the doors at a certain time. And if I had no appointments, you know what I did? Nothing. I goofed off because I'd already done what was most important, right? So most of us don't have appointments every day. I mean, certain times of the year we're busier, but a lot of times we don't have an appointment. And so I was never doing busy work, right? Because the only thing I needed to do was knock on doors. And so if someone's new getting into the business, you literally, if you just focus on making your contact, however you're going to do that, everything else after that is by choice, right? It's optional to some extent. Sure, you got to know the market. Sure, you got to know the contract. I mean, there are obvious things that, right, you and I would know after 20 years, right, because we've done it so many times. When you're new, it is not, right, it's not a habit yet. But there is really not much else to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the technical aspects of the business right now, like for guys like you and I, like it's second nature, right? And, where people would, I remember when I first started, I would like pre-fill in the purchase agreements because I didn't really pay attention in realtor school, but I didn't know what half the sections meant, even though I'd been trained in it. So I'd have to restudy it and, and then I'd go over it, I would be able to explain it, but I didn't have that, pressure on me to do it. And it's interesting though, you mentioned like Chris Voss, because he's he's somebody, we've followed. He's an Iowa farm boy, and he's now with a group called Genius Network. And there's a guy who's affiliated named Dean Jackson who talks about, I don't know if you know Dean Jackson. But,
I've not met him, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I've gone to like some events with Dean, and great guy, like super. Chris is a great guy. Chris is good. Joe Polish runs Genius Network, all like just genuinely great people. And he talks about this people identifying themselves when they're ready, right? Like, and that's why you walk door to door to door, and you make these contacts, and those that are ready they'll raise their hand and they'll say, I'm ready to go. And it's just it's so, I find it both fascinating and frustrating that so often many agents, and they're in this office, our office. They were in my last office, and they're in the office down the street. They're complaining that they're not busy enough and they're not doing enough business. Yet they will not do the thing that makes them, that where they can actually provide value to people. Raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm here to help you, and here's how I can help you." What is is there a way to motivate those people to do this? Have you found the secret sauce? I struggle with that a lot because with myself, to start with, and I try to, I know people that I try to motivate into doing these things, and
I think there's 170 pages of motivation behind Stephen.
Well, right. Well,
thank you, Jeremy.
And this isn't me trying to, maybe, but I am going to buy your book for other people in my office and make it required reading and read it with them, because it's like you're in my head, and the things I'm trying to tell them. You've articulated very nicely, the challenges that I think all real estate agents will face over time, and some have it figured out. And you talk a little bit about having the balance too, right? Like being able to be in a space where you're not working 100 hours a week, which I'm sure we've all done. And that is for me, that's, your bank account might be higher, but as a father now, husband, friend of people, a son, I don't want to work 100 hours a week. If that's what I have to do to support a lifestyle, I'm either going to change my lifestyle or change careers.
Yeah. I mean, the chapter 1, I have a whole picture on that, on, the danger zone. That is the danger zone. Working more than, I'll say 80 hours a week, but probably it's more like 60 or 70. If you're working more than 60, 70, 80 hours a week, right, you're in the danger zone, because you're probably making money and life seems great, but at what cost? And I'm not saying people shouldn't work hard. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying for most of us, that's unsustainable. Something's not working, right? And something else is not working in our life.
Well, and I remember when I was there in 2009, 10, remember the market crash? Those were
terrible,
dark days. And, I got into the REO business, and I was so afraid to hire people and stuff. So I was literally working, I say 8 days a week, 25 hours a day. It felt like it.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say I was working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, some of these weeks, trying to do broker price opinions, getting sign calls from buyers that I would still go run out and take. I had a few employees at the time, but I should have had about 2 or 3 more. And I was so afraid. My health deteriorated. My relationship with my wife went in the gutter. I was a miserable wretch of a human being, and I was making a lot of money, but looking back in retrospect, uh, I about lost it all, including if I look at my health, I gained like 50 pounds, and I never been so heavy, so unhealthy, and so miserable in my entire life. And when you look back at life, I mean, I'm 100% believer in working hard, right? I grew up on a farm, and like say, gosh, talk about the 8-day work week, and with no pay. But but I think there's a limit to where you start cannibalizing yourself, right?
Yeah.
So,
but that's an important part, but it also goes back to the people that you were talking about. How do you motivate someone who isn't taking the action that they need to be taking? And
Jeremy, listen to this.
Right. I can't do your push-ups for you, right? You have to do your own push-ups, right? There's that old line. And
it's a great one though.
It is a good one. There's a cruder one that's like, I can't pee for you, but like push-ups usually work, right? That analogy usually works. And I think for most people, right, you got to get to a point where, and that's why the chapter on the why is so important. Not that I'm the expert on coming up with your why. All I'm pointing out is, if you don't, for those of you that can't see, he's got the Start With Why with Simon Sinek on it. Right, people should read that book. All I'm saying is we all have one, even by default, and that's to survive. And if you can't come up with something to keep you going when you don't want to take the action you need to take, right, then you will be out of business, right? The people you're talking about, Scott, just aren't going to make it, right?
Well, I talk about comfort, right? And like, we're very comfortable. Like it's, one of the things that happened in COVID was that we were all paid to stay home, right? You could have been
we weren't.
Right.
We weren't.
Well, no, real estate agents could get PPP money,
but
the IDL loans,
but that's not.
Yeah, but there was, it was, told to stay home, and we didn't, particularly in property management. We're like, hey, don't worry about your toilet not working. Pandemic, we're not coming over. We didn't get that. We didn't get that opportunity, nor did we ask for it. But I mean, with me, I think it's sometimes I get too comfortable. Like you remember the boot heel on your throat when you started in real estate, and you had a couple kids, which I admit must have been terrifying. I don't know how you did it, but you had your why, like need to eat, need to pay mortgage. Like at a certain point, people get to where, maybe their spouse is making a lot of money. Maybe they've, made some wise investments. They got some rentals, and, they don't need to worry about where the next meal is coming from, where the next, mortgage payment, the rent is. And you lose that hunger a little bit, that drive. And I think that's where, Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you've read that book.
I have.
I bet you have, and I think we've read a lot of the same books. I've got about 400 more in my office that I haven't read yet. But he talks about, if the why is strong enough, the how will take care of itself.
Right.
And there's, when it comes down to, can you inspire someone, right? But can you motivate somebody who hasn't gotten that? And I know I'm taking us off course a little bit here, but that's the thing I struggle with. But what I loved about your book, though, it kind of it spoke to that a little bit. Like it spoke to the excuses that we come up with, the tyranny of the urgent. I don't know if that's somebody else's phrase, but you don't say it specifically, but you talk about the urgent tasks that derail us every day, and that can but you can get email. I've loathed the smartphone, because now, like, instead of someone being able to leave you a message, call you, right? They can text you, they can email you, they can Facebook message you, they can try to contact you on Twitter. Like how does one, like, you got to be able to shut that noise out and able to engage in productive, fulfilling activities. And I am like on the food chain. I'm like if you see the top of the food chain, I'm the guy on the bottom when it comes to that, or they know I'm the sucker who's gonna like fall for some, worthless text or email that has nothing to do with anything that I want to accomplish during the day. Anyway, so what is kind of shift gears? We talked about, you got in the business, you didn't like the corporate job. What you want, kind of the thing that, advice or things you would have wish you would have known. I don't know if we necessarily hit that one. And if we did, I apologize, but what is one, like, what do you wish you would have known? Refresh my memory if you already covered it.
Yeah, no, I was just, it was realizing you cannot turn a no into a yes. A no is a no.
Okay.
And actually one of my mentors in La Quinta, he told me this, but I got it in a different way eventually. No just meant next opportunity to him. He might have even trademarked that. But no just meant next opportunity. Just go next. And the doors was a great lesson in that, right? Because, I knock on your door, knock, knock, knock. You open the door, I say, hi, it's Stephen. You're like, get out of my house. And you shut the door. All right, go to the next door. I mean, it really is that simple.
Yeah.
And, but not being attached to worse, right? Where you get stuck is I knock on your door, you say, yeah, we're thinking of moving in 3 to 6 months. And the truth is you have a good realtor, right? You have someone, there's no way I'm going to convince you to work with me. And so for me, spending any time or energy trying to get you to work with me, total waste of time.
Yeah. And it almost comes like you almost lose your integrity at a little bit too, right? If they know that you're like, hey, I've got someone who's really good, ready to use, but you keep like, coming at me, I'd be like, hey, you know what? Now I don't like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If you gracefully leave and say, well, you know what? Anything changes, let me know and good luck. I hope it sells. It's funny you talk about the door knocking though. I remember a guy who, this is probably 2 years ago now, a guy who was clearly new in the hazard insurance business came to my house, knocked on the door, gave me his card. And I wasn't in the market and, for another insurance person, but I really respected what he was doing and knowing how hard it must have been. But I never saw or heard from the guy again, which kind of sucked because he might have been somebody I would have given a crack. Someone said, hey, I want to talk to a couple insurance people. Like I have like 1 or 2 really good ones. I might have gave him a shot just having the cojones to actually go door to door. Cause it's not an easy thing.
Mm-mm.
Like there's a certain level of respect I would give somebody just for doing that. As long as they weren't annoying,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So what keeps you up at night? Like what's the thing that Stephen Ross will wake up in the middle of the night screaming in a cold sweat?
Well, first off, I don't ever wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. For the most part, I sleep like a baby by design, right? Because I've designed my life so that I don't have things to keep me up late at night. But to say I'm worry-free or stress-free would be inaccurate. And I would say what gets me, I don't say, doesn't keep me up, but keeps me, what's getting me off track at the moment is a lot like, and I think a lot of people did this last year during the pandemic, right? We were all trying to figure out how it's all going to play out, right? Reading, listening to every podcast, listening to everybody, reading, and right, I am not smart enough to figure it out, right? I was not smart enough. And finally I realized that, and I just went back to doing what I should be doing every day. And I think the market right now is probably the most challenging market I've been in. And we've seen quite a few difficult markets. This is by far the hardest. And I want to be right? I want to figure out how this is going to blow up or how this is going to end. And right, I want to be the one that called exactly. Who cares, really? I mean, in the end, it really makes no difference if I figure it out, because right now I have 4 buyers that need to buy a house. 3 of them have houses to sell, right? I've already listed their home, ready to go. It's in the MLS. It's the moment I find them a house, I list their house. They don't need me to figure it out. They need me to help them get a freaking house, right? And but it's so easy, right? And that's my thing. We all have other things to keep us right. For some people, they got a car hobby. For other people, they're technophobes or whatever the thing is. We all have things that keep us off track. So I would say I'm not worried as much as I going back to the resistance. I just pay more attention to what's distracting my time and energy and my focus. Because that's really where I end up losing, right?
No, that's a great answer. It's like focusing on, when's the market going to crash? You get that question. Like, I don't know. Like if I knew, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be on my island.
And, look, I tell people, be prepared that the market might drop 20 to 30%. Well, how do you know? I don't know. All I'm saying is, as long as you're cool, then who cares? If you're going to be there 10 years, who cares?
Right.
And then I don't have to.
If you're going to sell in a year, maybe rent is the option.
Maybe you don't buy it. Maybe renting is the option for you.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple people, but like in your career, like who's been your influencers, maybe like personal mentors or books or, I know that's kind of two different questions, but maybe you can give two different answers.
I mean, it's like you, I have a bajillion books, many of which I've read, but many more that I have not. But I would say, the Chris Voss, I've done a lot of training with him over the last 4 years. And so he's certainly been a more recent influence. Obviously, my coach has been a big influence. And the broker I worked for here, Elaine, kind of kept me going when things looked bleak. But so
you're with Sotheby's right now?
I'm with Sotheby's now, but we used to, when I moved out here, we were a little boutique called Stussy Realty, and Elaine was the broker owner. I knew her through coaching in LA. And, having people that believe in you when sometimes you don't believe in yourself is absolutely critical. It's essential, I think. And so I was blessed to have a lot of people like that. And then as far as books, there are so many, but I would say early on, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino is by far just so eloquent. And
he got a
so
call
simple.
out by Matthew McConaughey in Green Lights.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
So that book for sure. And obviously Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art, because that concept was just so distinct. It just became so clear to me, because I read that maybe my second year in the business, and I just saw it everywhere, right? Once it gets acknowledged, right, that, you're reticulating activation, your RAS, whatever it's called, right? Then all of a sudden you start to notice, oh my God, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, it's everywhere, right? And then, but again, the moment you can acknowledge it and you're aware of it, you actually have a chance to do something about it. It's when it's left undistinguished, like as a mystery. Oh, I don't know why, I just can't get anything done.
Because you're normal.
We put ourselves in this fog, just unwilling to look. And the moment you're willing to look and be truthful, right, you can see what you're doing. Is it working for you or not? So I would say probably I could list 5 others, but those 2, which by the way, may not be impactful to everybody else, but they were certainly impactful to me.
I agree. I have found inspiration in those books. And what is also funny is you left out the one, like so many people always will say in real estate, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, by Robert Kiyosaki, which or How to Win Friends and Influence People, the Dale Carnegie stuff.
Yeah, I've read them. They didn't speak to me. They didn't influence me.
And you know what? That's okay, right?
That's okay. Yeah.
Many books I've read that were like, I don't know what people are seeing in this, but I guess it was kind of interesting, but don't ever want to do that again.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard Tim Ferriss talk about The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, and it was a book written in the 50s. And if you've never read it, I do recommend it. It is a fantastic book, and it is written in the 50s, right? So I think it was the 50s. The examples and everything are old, but the principles are still solid. And I've heard Tim talk about it on his podcast, and he mentions it to people, and people are like, I didn't really get that book, right? Right. So Right, I get it, right? Everything's not for everyone. That is the beauty of our world, that we have so many options.
Right. Right. So what are you focusing on now? It sounds like you may be doing some coaching, still selling actively.
Still actively selling. Yep, still actively selling. My goal now is just to get the book out into as many people's hands as possible. It is for a select group of people who want to do well and be well, right? If you want to be number one, God bless you. This book's not for you. Don't waste your time. But if you want to have a life and have a business that, provides financially for you, then this book is for you, because it's a framework, not in what to do, but how to be. And so that's my first thing. And yes, I do some training and coaching, more training than coaching per se. But I do training and coaching. People can go to my website.
What's your website?
It's the same as the book. I kept it very simple. It's doorsopenwhenyouKnock.com.
Okay. DoorsopenwhenyouKnock.com. And the book you can get on Amazon. I know.
Amazon, yep.
Both Kindle version and is a hardcover and a paperback?
There is a paperback. There is a hard copy. And most people are just buying the paperback.
Yeah, well, I usually buy the paperbacks. Yeah, I don't understand paying the extra $10, but
it is an extra $10 to buy the hardback. You save yourself $10.
Yeah.
Is the book in any physical store as well as Amazon?
Not that I'm aware of at the moment.
Are there any physical stores left? Barnes and Noble, I think, still has.
Barnes and Noble still has physical books. Yeah, there actually is a great bookstore here in Denver called The Tattered Cover. I do like to go in there from time to time, and I always walk out with like $10. And my partner, she looks at me, she's like, why are you buying $10? I'm like, because they look good. I'm going to read them eventually.
That's awesome. Jeremy, I feel like you've been quietly absorbing throughout this, which is good. I'm very proud of you. Anything you would like to ask?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I need to unmute you, I think.
Okay, yeah, let me get off of mute. Here we go. When did, you don't have to give away too much from your book, but when did you finally feel that your techniques were starting to snowball?
Well, that is a great question. I would say it probably wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, really, and maybe the last 2 or 3, because I just, I'm thinking in my head how far detailed I want to give in this answer, but what else was going in my life? I mean, I got to a point for me, right? I was skilled enough 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So that was not the issue, but it's believing exactly where I was is exactly where I needed to be. And the moment I gave myself that space, it was amazing how many more opportunities came to me. And so for me, I would say probably 4 to 5 years ago, and the last couple, have been really, really good. I've been very, very grateful and very blessed for clients and business I have.
So are you into like meditation, or how do you unwind?
I meditate. I do like to, so last year couldn't really knock on doors. And so I would go out at the time I would normally go to the doors, and I would just call all my clients and all the people whose numbers I had. So walking and running and hiking, those things make a difference. I noticed I haven't been running as much the last year or two. And I went for a run. Started going when the weather was better last week, and I remembered why I go, right? It clears my thinking. I run on this thing called the Highline Canal. It is the Highline Canal. It is a gravel dirt road with a man-made canal next to it and trees. And so here you are in the middle of South Denver. You would have no idea, right? Because you can't see anything but trees and dirt and plants and things like that. And I just find that very, very grounding. And so I do meditate. I'm not an expert at it, but I do it. And, I just try and move my body every day. That makes the biggest difference. honestly.
Yeah, a little bit of exercise. It doesn't take much, 30, 45 minutes. If it's all you can do, it's like, and then the meditation, I mean, there's so many, like Headspace is the app I use. If you want to do guided, even for like 5 minutes, just closing your eyes and letting your mind drift a little bit and wander. It has such a revitalization
Yep.
effect on just your conscious mind and your subconscious and stuff. So it's something I used to scoff at people when they did. And like, what are you gonna do? Rub patchouli oil on your nipples next there, pal? You know, like, and I've tried that. I like that too. So it's amazing how just I don't know, if physically, mentally, whatever, it just cleanses you. And it doesn't need to be a half an hour with a yogi leading it, you know, in a sweat lodge, you know.
No.
Be at your desk.
At your desk. I do it in my car a lot sometimes. I mean, I have used Headspace. I use Sam Harris's Waking Up. I'm not saying that's better. It's just the one I happen to use right now. And, you know, it doesn't matter which tool you use. It's like knocking on doors. It doesn't matter which doors you knock on, as long as you're doing it, it all works.
Right, right.
And
yeah.
I wanted to just go back and say one thing for the realtors who are listening. If you're not an exercise person and you hate the gym and you hate all that stuff, that's totally fine. But most likely, a few times a week, you've either got to be on a call or you've got to make a couple calls with especially a client. We all have those clients, you know, who are long-winded. You just know when you call them, it's a half hour, no matter what. And you love them anyway, right? So it's not particular. Those are the best times to, as long as it's not freezing cold, go outside, walk, call them. And now you can walk, get some exercise, and call your client. You're not, right? If you got to be hyper efficient, you're not wasting time. You know, I would say that's
I
the
agree.
easiest thing to do.
Like, or if you have a long drive, you know, be able to multitask. And, you know, that is the beauty of, you know, the technology we have. If you don't let it become, the tyrant that rules over you, but you can utilize it to help free you and moments to get, you know, help you clear out space. Like what is, if you can bring order, you know, structure to chaos, you can truly be free, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's, and, you know, using these, you know, technology can, again, it can create chaos in your life if you're not able to structure it and you know, utilize it to your advantage versus disadvantage. Like many times I'll be afraid to, like, I won't sit at my desk and make phone calls because you got the email, you got, you know, it's just like you can't be present. And that's another thing you said in the book. You talked about, you know, being present, you know, and being there and being in the moment, you know. And anyway, there's so much good stuff. I am growing long-winded right now. Like that, I am that client, by the way. When people call me, they better be in their car or running or doing something productive, because after they're done with me, that's going to be exhausted either way. But I really appreciate, you know, we appreciate the time. This has been just incredibly beneficial and the highlight of our day. I say without, like, no joke, the book was awesome. I am buying a few copies for some people in our office that desperately need to hear the message. And, you know, I wish you nothing but success. And, you know, anything you'd like to add before we go?
Thank you. I mean, really, thank you for, right? Because how many times people don't read the book, and, you know, the fact that you're willing to take the time and gear the conversation towards actually helping people, right? Which is the whole goal, right? How can I make a contribution, a difference to someone else? So thanks for doing the podcast. Thanks for reading the book and bringing it up in a way, right, that actually will help someone. And
I have to throw this in there. You knocked on our door and you found us. And, you know, that just another example of how, you know, you just knocking on doors. You know, I could have hit delete on the email, like, who's this guy, right? Like, you know, it's just another door opening. And I remember, like, again, the Joe Polish at Genius Network, he talked about a book that he picked up by an individual who was a marketer that had written it 15 years earlier, that, you know, he just happened to get a copy book, thought this was really good, calls this individual, just says, hey, I'm wondering, can you talk to me? The guy said, hey, I'm $20,000 for like an hour. And turns out, Joe ended up selling them services within the next year after hiring him to do, his work, and they built a wonderful relationship. So you just never know, right? And the one certainty is if your couch isn't necessarily going to enrich your life very much. So it's better if you get out of your couch and go out and knock on some doors. And
Well said.
All right. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to have you back soon. And we're gonna do our part to get the message